There's an abandoned railway station in a small town that most people drive past without ever giving it a second glance. The tracks are rusted, the platform is cracked, and the old waiting room is swallowed in vines. But for those who grew up around it, the place is more than just forgotten, it's feared. People whisper that something sinister has claimed the station, that late at night, when the moon is high and the fog drapes over the broken rails, voices echo where no one stands. My curiosity about this place began the summer I stayed with my cousin in that town. He warned me right away never to go near the station after dark, but the way he said it only made me want to see it more. He spoke like he wasn't warning me about trespassing, but about something alive in the silence of those tracks. The first time I walked past the station, I felt it immediately. It wasn't just emptiness, it was pressure, like being underwater. The air was too still, and even the cicadas went silent near the platform. A wooden sign swung loosely in the wind, though there was no wind that day. The doors of the waiting room stood wide open, though I knew no one had used them in decades. My cousin pulled me back by the arm and told me stories about a station master who died there in a fire back in the 1940s. His body was never found, though people swore they saw him wandering the platform for years after, lantern in hand, as if still doing his duty. Others spoke about passengers who disappeared after stepping off the last train, never to be seen again. I laughed it off at the time, but something in his eyes told me he wasn't joking. That night, I couldn't sleep. From the window of my cousin's house, you could almost see the outline of the station. Around midnight, I caught a flicker of light moving across the platform, like an old lantern swinging back and forth. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was just headlights from a passing car. But no cars came down that road at night, and the light kept moving steadily until it simply blinked out. I told myself it had to be my imagination, but deep down I knew what I had seen. Something was still keeping watch at that forgotten station, something that wasn't human anymore. My cousin refused to even talk about it the next morning, his face pale, as if I had touched a nerve. That only fueled me more. I wanted to know what secrets the haunted railway station was hiding, even if it meant facing whatever walked its platform after dark. The next evening, I made up my mind that I wasn't going to just watch from a distance anymore. Curiosity had already bitten too deep. I waited until my cousin was asleep, then slipped out quietly with nothing but my phone flashlight and a half-dead sense of bravery. The streets were empty, and the closer I got to the station, the colder the air became. It was late summer, but my breath started to fog as if I'd stepped into winter. That was the first real sign that something about this place was unnatural. The weeds along the track swayed though the night was completely still, and every step I took seemed to echo like I was walking through a cavern instead of under the open sky. When I reached the platform, the boards groaned like they remembered every train that had ever passed through. I stood there, frozen, staring at the waiting room. The door creaked slowly, though I could swear I hadn't touched it. My light caught on faded timetables peeling from the wall, the ink melted into unreadable smears. Dust floated in the air, but beneath it was the sharp smell of something burnt, like wood long scorched by fire. That smell shouldn't have been there, it was decades too late for that. Just as I was about to step inside, a metallic clang rang out from deeper in the station, like a signal bell being struck. My skin crawled. Every story I had heard about the station master's lantern rushed back at once. I tried to tell myself it was just rats or a piece of metal falling loose, but then I saw it. A dim orange glow appeared at the far end of the platform, swaying back and forth, steady, deliberate. It wasn't a reflection, it wasn't my imagination. Someone, or something, was walking toward me, carrying that lantern. The glow didn't brighten the figure holding it. The light just floated there, detached, growing closer with each swing. My throat went dry. I wanted to run, but my feet were locked in place as the glow reached the halfway mark of the platform. And then, clear as day, I heard footsteps on the wood. Not echoes, not random creaks, actual heavy boots striking the boards, one after another. That's when I finally broke. I turned and bolted back into the night, not daring to look behind me, convinced that if I did, I'd see a face staring straight through me. For the rest of that night, I couldn't shake the sound of those boots from my head. Even tucked beneath the blankets at my cousin's house, I swore I still heard them, pacing steadily across the platform as if whoever carried that lantern had never stopped walking. By morning, my cousin noticed my pale face and asked what I had done. When I admitted I went to the station, he turned white as a sheet. He told me about others who had gone there at night, teenagers looking for a thrill, drifters seeking shelter, even a group of out-of-towners who treated the place like a ghost-hunting attraction. Not one of them came back the same. Some disappeared altogether. Others returned silent, empty, like part of them had been stripped away. He begged me not to go again, but it was already too late. Something about that place had its hooks in me. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat staring at the outline of the station from the window. The pull was unbearable. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was like the station itself was calling me back, demanding I return. By midnight, I was on the path again, flashlight in hand, my chest tight with fear but my mind determined. When I stepped onto the platform this time, the silence hit harder. It wasn't just still, it was suffocating, like sound itself couldn't exist here. And then, faint but sharp, I heard the hiss of steam. My blood ran cold. The station hadn't seen a train in decades, yet the unmistakable chug of an engine echoed through the dark. The ground trembled as if something massive was pulling in, and then, out of the fog, a train appeared. It was no ordinary train. The carriages gleamed black, their windows glowing with a sickly green light. The engine screeched, sparks flying, but it moved with an unnatural smoothness, like it was gliding rather than rolling on the rusted rails. The lantern appeared again, swinging at the far end of the platform, and this time I saw a figure. He was tall, dressed in a soot-stained uniform with a cap low over his face. His skin looked gray, stretched too tight, and where his eyes should have been were only hollow sockets glowing faintly orange, like embers in a dying fire. He didn't stumble or drift like an apparition, he walked with purpose, lantern raised, as though he were still guiding passengers to their train. The doors of the carriages slid open, one by one, and that's when I saw them. Shapes stepping out of the fog, climbing aboard. Men, women, children, some in old-fashioned clothes, some in modern dress, all moving with the same lifeless pace, their eyes empty, their faces slack. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at anything. They just marched onto the train like prisoners following orders. My heart hammered in my chest, but I couldn't move. The station master stopped halfway down the platform, and though his face was shrouded in shadow, I knew he was looking straight at me. The lantern tilted in my direction, its glow flaring as if inviting me forward. For a terrifying moment, I almost stepped toward him. My legs twitched, my body leaning like a puppet on strings, when suddenly a scream rang out behind me. It was my cousin. He had followed me despite his fear, and his voice shattered the trance. "Run," he shouted, yanking me back. The lantern's glow flickered violently, the train shrieked as if in fury, and the passengers froze mid-step. The world around us shook, and in the chaos, I finally found the strength to run. My cousin dragged me away from the platform as the train wailed, its whistle so sharp it rattled my bones. I didn't dare look back, not even when the air behind us filled with the sound of boots chasing in the dark. Only when we reached the safety of the road did the noises stop. My cousin turned to me, his eyes wide with terror, and whispered, "Now you've seen it. And once it sees you, it never stops." I thought escaping that night meant I was safe, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The haunting didn't stay behind at the platform. It followed me, seeping into every corner of my life. That very next morning, I woke to the sound of faint whistling, a low, mournful note that filled my bedroom. At first, I thought it was my cousin outside, but when I checked, the yard was empty. The sound stopped the moment I looked, but my bedsheet smelled faintly of smoke and iron, like I had been sleeping inside the engine of that ghostly train. My cousin avoided my eyes all morning, like he already knew what I was going through. When I pressed him, he admitted something that made my stomach turn. "Once you see the station master," he said, "he comes for you. Doesn't matter if you run. Doesn't matter if you leave town. He'll find you." I laughed it off at first, desperate to believe it was just fear talking. But as the day went on, the world around me kept warping. Walking through the town, I'd catch a flicker of orange light reflected in shop windows, swinging like a lantern, though no one else seemed to notice. At night, I couldn't close my eyes without hearing the heavy boots pacing across the floorboards, even when I locked my bedroom door. The sound would move from the hallway to right outside my door, pausing there as if something waited patiently for me to open it. When I asked my cousin why people didn't just burn the station down, he shook his head violently. They tried. More than once. But the fire always burns out, or the people trying disappear. He leaned close and whispered, "The station doesn't want to be destroyed. It wants passengers." On the fourth night, the dream came. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. I found myself standing alone on the platform again, fog curling around my feet, the sound of the engine echoing through the night. The ghost train pulled in slow, its green-lit windows glowing brighter than before. I could see faces pressed against the glass, hollow-eyed passengers staring blankly into the dark. When the doors slid open, I heard my own name called, sharp and commanding. The station master stood at the end of the platform, lantern raised high, his eyeless gaze burning straight into me. "Bored," he rasped, though his mouth never moved. My body lurched forward without my consent, each step heavy, my will bending as if I were being reeled in on a line. I fought to stop, screaming silently in my head, but my legs kept moving. Just as I reached the first step of the carriage, the whistle shrieked so loud it split my skull. I bolted awake in my bed, drenched in sweat, my cousin shaking me violently. He said I had been sleepwalking, my hand on the front door, lantern light flickering outside the window. From that night on, sleep was a war I couldn't win. Each time I closed my eyes, I was dragged back to the platform, the station master waiting, closer each time. My cousin grew terrified, insisting I had to leave town before it was too late. But deep down, I knew it didn't matter where I went. The station had found me, claimed me. The haunting wasn't tied to its rotting wood or rusted rails anymore, it was tied to me. And the worst part was the pull. With every passing day, I wanted to go back. My fear was still there, but beneath it grew a strange longing, like part of me wanted to step onto that ghost train, to finally see where it went. My cousin begged me to resist, but how could I fight something that whispered to me every waking hour? Something that had already etched itself into my very bones? On the fifth night, I heard the whistle not in my dreams but in the real world. It cut through the silence of the town, so loud windows rattled and dogs barked. My cousin and I both ran to the window, and there it was, the green glow, seeping through the fog, stretching all the way from the tracks to the road outside his house. The train had left the station. It had come for me. The whistle outside shook the glass so hard I thought the windows would shatter. My cousin pulled me back from the sill, his face drained of color, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from that eerie green glow bleeding through the fog. It wasn't just light, it pulsed, alive, wrapping around the house like the coils of a snake. Then came the sound of grinding metal, the unmistakable screech of a train dragging its wheels across rusted rails, except the noise was on the street, far from the tracks. My cousin shouted for me to stay away, but something inside me was already moving toward the door. It wasn't choice anymore, it was compulsion. My legs shook as if a current of invisible energy had taken hold of them, dragging me step by step toward the glow outside. When I opened the door, the fog poured in thick, swallowing the porch. The world beyond looked unrecognizable, our quiet road now split by black iron tracks, fresh and gleaming, cutting straight through the town. The ghost train stood waiting, impossibly huge, stretching into darkness on either side, its carriages humming with that sickly green light. Steam hissed around me, damp and hot, and beneath it I smelled ash, charred wood, and something faintly sweet, like decaying flesh. My cousin grabbed my arm, digging his nails into my skin. "Don't look at him," he begged. But it was already too late. At the far end of the road, the station master appeared. Lantern swinging, boots striking with heavy precision, he walked closer, each step echoing like thunder in my chest. His face, pale and drawn, came into full view for the first time. His mouth hung slightly open, lips cracked and blackened as if burned, but no sound left them. Instead, the voice filled my skull directly, a low command vibrating through my bones. "Bored." My cousin screamed for me to fight it, shaking me violently, but I felt myself slipping further out of my own control. My feet lifted, one after another, carrying me toward the open door of the nearest carriage. Inside, shadows shifted. The passengers were waiting, their blank eyes fixed on me now, mouths twitching into faint, grotesque smiles. Some were old, some young, but every face bore the same expressionless hunger. The train moaned, its engine breathing like some enormous animal, eager to consume. Just as my hand touched the rail of the carriage steps, my cousin did something reckless. He stepped between me and the train. He screamed into the night, cursing the station master, daring him to take him instead. For the first time, the lantern's glow wavered, flickering uncertainly. The eyeless gaze shifted from me to him. The passengers stirred, restless, as if the balance had been disrupted. The station master lifted his lantern higher, and the glow engulfed my cousin. He screamed, his body convulsing violently as if unseen hands were tearing at his soul. I lunged forward to pull him back, but the heat from the lantern was unbearable, searing my skin before I even touched him. In desperation, I grabbed a chunk of rock from the roadside and hurled it at the lantern. The glass cracked with a sharp ring, and the glow sputtered for a heartbeat. My cousin collapsed to the ground, gasping, his face pale but alive. The train let out a roar, an ear-splitting whistle that shook the ground so hard I nearly lost my footing. The passengers began to scream, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide, voices shrill and inhuman, as if the very fabric of the night was tearing apart. The station master lowered his lantern, and though its light was fractured, it still burned. He turned his head toward me, and for the first time, I saw his mouth twist into something almost human, a smile. "You can delay," the voice hissed inside me, "but you cannot escape." The fog swirled violently, the train's carriages rattling, and then, with a sudden lurch, the entire thing began to fade. The tracks beneath my feet dissolved into dust, the glow evaporated, and the road was quiet once more. My cousin lay trembling, clutching his chest, whispering that he felt something still inside him, clawing, trying to pull him back. I knelt beside him, shaking, realizing the horror had only deepened. The train could leave its station now. It could come to us whenever it wanted. And worst of all, the station master had chosen us both. There would be no outrunning it, not anymore. The days after that night blurred into a waking nightmare. My cousin and I barely spoke, both of us carrying the weight of what we had seen, what we had survived. But it didn't feel like survival, it felt like postponement. Every hour of silence carried with it a waiting, an expectancy, like the train was just outside our vision, ready to tear through the veil again. My cousin grew weaker, shadows deepening under his eyes, his body shivering even when the sun blazed overhead. He said he could hear the station master's boots pacing inside his skull, counting down to something. I wasn't much better. I'd catch myself drifting off, and in those seconds of half-sleep, would hear the whistle, faint but certain, calling my name. We tried leaving town. Packed our bags, borrowed a neighbor's truck, and drove until we thought we were safe. But the further we went, the stranger the road became. At first it was small things, the gas gauge swinging wildly, the radio picking up bursts of static that shaped themselves into faint voices. Then came the fog. Thick, choking fog that rolled in no matter how far we drove. Finally, we saw them, the tracks, laid fresh and gleaming across the highway, cutting through the asphalt as if they had always been there. My cousin slammed the brakes, and we stared in disbelief. In the distance, the faint glow of lantern light swayed. We turned back, terrified, and understood the truth: the haunting wasn't bound to that station anymore. It was bound to us. The nights grew unbearable. Sometimes I'd wake up to the sound of the whistle outside my window, the glass rattling as if a train had passed inches away. Other times, I'd find black soot scattered across the floorboards of the bedroom, or footprints burned into the wood as though someone had walked through fire. My cousin began to lose himself. He'd sit for hours, staring into nothing, lips moving soundlessly. One night, I woke to find him standing in the doorway, his face slack, his eyes reflecting an orange glow I couldn't see. He whispered, "It's almost time," and for a moment, I didn't recognize him anymore. On the final night, the whistle came louder than ever, rattling the very walls of the house. The floor trembled, pictures fell from the walls, and outside, the fog was alive, swirling with the green glow of the approaching train. My cousin stood, calm now, as though he had accepted what was coming. "I can't fight it anymore," he said softly. "It wants us both." I begged him, screamed at him to resist, but he only smiled faintly, the same hollow smile I had seen on the passengers. And then, before I could stop him, he walked straight into the now.